Good afternoon, everybody. And I'm so excited to be here at Reframe. So I just need to say the word a couple more times. Reframe, reframe, reframe. The reason I needed to say it a couple more times is that that word is really important to me because I learned the word through developing stories. Now, our stories matter, and the way we tell the stories to ourselves matters enormously. Whether the world considers us a superhero in our own narrative or a victim of destiny depends on how we choose to tell the story to ourselves first. So, even though Pinky did a great job introducing me, I just need to say this. My name is Suzanne Jurva, and I am a filmmaker. So I need to say that sentence because it was something that was really unimaginable for me to say a few years back. Okay, maybe like 30 years back, but I'm going to still pretend. Just a few years back. And that was because I couldn't imagine that for myself from where I came from. And then until I had the good fortune of meeting or running into and working into a very well-known and established producer who changed my life by telling me I needed to reframe my story, the way I thought about myself, and to give myself a new story. So I was shocked into reframing my story. And today, I'm going to show and hopefully help you learn a few techniques from narrative film and narrative storytelling that can help you construct your own personal narrative and reframe your story if you need to. Excuse me. I'm sorry. And although there are many storytelling devices out there that you can use to craft your story, I'm going to focus on character arc, the role of editing, and the power of a reveal to help you to transform your story and maybe your life. So we're going to start with the character arc. What is a character arc? In film, it is defined as a transformation or growth that a character has over an entirety of a screenplay. A character arc has a clear beginning, middle, and end. So I'm going to start with the beginning of my character story arc. I was born in Detroit, raised by a mom and a dad who worked at Ford's. And if you're from Detroit, that's the correct way to pronounce Ford. You worked at Ford's, right? I was a figure skater who dreamed of going to the Olympics until one day it was very clear I was not going to go to the Olympics. I did not have another plan. But then at 17, I scrambled and got into college. I went to Michigan Tech because it was the family school, so to speak, and it was the only school I got in. But I hated it. I hated my major, hated anything to do with engineering and scientific and technical writing, hated everything about that world. I was in the wrong place. But I did have a bright spot. I took a basic editing class, film editing class, and I found out that I found myself and that I was going to go work in film. Now, I didn't know much about film. I just had one class, but I knew I had to move to LA and go towards my life in film. Yeah, that was a reveal that surprised my parents too. So within this character arc, there are many more devices I'm using to tell a story. The first one is the turning point. I'm going to go to LA and make my opportunity and head for higher stakes. There is the device of a roadblock. I'm in the UP, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. There's no Hollywood there. I am going to have to get to LA somehow to work in film and television. So all these devices I use to restart imagining who I'm going to be from a Youper girl into someone who works in Hollywood. So I will come back to my character arc, but I'd like to talk about the importance of editing next, or reframing, because when you basically mess up something, or you have to do a big redo in film, we edit, but in life you can reframe. Now, we've all done something or said something that we wish we could take back, but for me, my reframing was necessary because I never spoke. I never spoke at meetings. As I mentioned, I went to engineering school in the Northwoods with only 11% women. And this is something I hate to admit, but I never spoke up in 4 years in class. Never once. I never answered a question, never asked a question, never participated in group discussions. I was too shy and too afraid to speak. So I took that story of myself with me to LA, the land of extroverts and film majors and English majors and countless other degrees where speaking was part of the curriculum. So hard smash cut to, I'm in the inner sanctum at DreamWorks, working on big films like Pinky said, like Saving Private Ryan, Amistad, Lincoln, Prince of Egypt, and many other. My role as the head of the research department was to make sure everything was realistic for all the DreamWorks films. My meeting style was this. I would occupy myself intensely by taking notes during the meeting, and then go back up to my office, write up memos and my suggestions. I would not bring up any ideas in the room. I had to go up back to my office, test them out, read them out loud, and then send them silently to a team. But one day, I couldn't get away with that any longer. Cut to, I was sitting in a story meeting for Gladiator. I was doing my usual. I was taking notes, not speaking. I wanted to say something, but I was too afraid. There were really important people in the room, and I was somebody who just did not belong in that room, I thought. Even though I had been on the project Gladiator, longer than anyone else except the writer. Branka Lustig, who was the Academy Award-winning producer of Schindler's List and a Holocaust survivor, was producing Gladiator. After a long meeting, again, where I didn't say a word, he came up to me and he said, "You need to speak up. You were hired to help pull this story together, and you belong here." Okay, well, and then he left. Well, that was somebody noticing me, but for not the right reasons. I was really embarrassed. I was mad. I wanted to quit. But then I realized Branko was right. It was not a fluke that I was part of this team. I was necessary. I had a lot of information and knowledge about gladiators. So I couldn't redo that meeting, except in my mind. I could reframe the meeting, and so in my imaginative reframing sessions, I spoke up. I went back to every meeting about Gladiator and imagined I was speaking up. I was feeling how it would be like if I were contributing to the brainstorming and not going back to my office and writing memos in silence. I reframed the meeting in my head, and I was a participant. So another story meeting was scheduled. I was armed. I practiced my speaking. Finally, I did it. I spoke up. I didn't die. I spoke up, and I was heard. And I mentioned that there was a problem. Well, Branko looked at me, and I was expecting one of those, like, you did it, happy nod things. Instead, he said to me quite tersely, "There are no problems. There are only opportunities." Okay, so hit the deflate button, why don't you? I was quiet, but guess what? I didn't deflate. Branko, I realized, was not trying to hurt me, but he was offering me an amazing gift. This was his motto of producing. So I reframed my role as a provider of opportunities. I really began to help shape the story, and I had the best time of my life. And from then on, that's what I did with all my projects. I became a producer by reframing all the problems into opportunities. So now we're going to go back to my story arc. We're in the middle of the story arc. I'm in the creative echelon of filmmaking, and I am a collaborator. So you might be losing attention at this point, so I'm going to drop a little name here about a handsome leading man by the name of George Clooney, who is yes. Who was starring in a film and a script that I was developing called The Peacemaker. So I am in a meeting with George Clooney, and again, my role is to bring the reality to the story. And at this point, I am a talker. I'm a big talker, okay? But on this day, I was asked to tell George how he will, on camera, dismantle a ticking nuclear bomb. Well, I did it, and I did it by repeating what an actual former member of the National Security Council had instructed me to do and say. It was really a glorious moment for me. Wow, how do you know that? Asked George. Walter, my boss at the time, said, Suzanne knows how to find out anything. She's our secret weapon. George said to me, you're really smart. I like smart women. And he does, because look who he married, right? So now I'm feeling really good about myself. This is my Princess Diana dancing with John Travolta moment. I had dazzled a major Hollywood handsome guy with my physics, and I was called smart. But then, of course, because this is life, just when you think everything's going really well, I sniffed something really bad. Like I smelled something really bad. I look down, and I see that during my physics speech, I had baby spit up all over my shirt. Because as it turns out, I had just given birth to my son Alex 3 weeks before. I had to rush in from maternity leave to do this meeting with George Clooney. I brought the baby with me, handed the baby off to my friend, and went into the George meeting with baby spit up all over me. So I bring that up because going back to the character arc and your story narrative, that just when you think you got it all together, life is going to throw you, quite literally, a spitball, and you're going to have to learn to laugh about things, move on, not dwell, not reframe on the situation, but reframe the situation with humor and as much as you can, because you're going to need it. So the last device I use to reframe my story is the big reveal, and I'd like to talk about that next. The big reveal is always, really revealing. I'll be honest, agreeing to do this presentation and preparing for it has been super hard. I haven't done something like this in close to 2 years. During COVID, I moderated a few virtual panels, pitched a project in a virtual pitch competition, and was part of a lab to develop an episodic series. But I have been silent again, and it's really comfortable. I don't have to speak. I like working alone in my home COVID office, and since I can just hit and deliver emails, I'm really happy. But I woke up the other day, decided not to call Daniel and say, dude, I just can't do this. I didn't do that. I woke up because I heard this voice in my head saying, you need to speak up. You belong out there telling your story. And, right? And someone out there needs to hear this today. Someone needs to hear that their voice is important and vital to not only the story of their life, but to all of our lives. So hopefully there's one person now who understands reframing their story is as easy as watching a film. Everybody has an equally valid and vital narrative in which they are the central character. So the end of my character arc is this, my big reveal in my career. And this sounds like it's the end, but to me, it's just as exciting as the beginning. At this point in my career, I am prioritizing bringing underrepresented filmmakers into the story rooms and to reframe the industry to be more inclusive and diverse. Right? Everybody, we're all doing that, right? So, if you're out there or in here, I can't wait until you reveal to the world what your personal narrative is and how you are reframing the industry and the industry of storytelling today. Your story is what we need to hear next. Thank you.